Let's talk about cryptids. Welcome to Weary Lore, and welcome to my Cryptids of America series. In this series, I will be introducing you to one cryptid from each state in America, giving you a short explanation of their history and story, and then giving my own opinion on the cryptid, where I think it came from, and what I think it could be. Now, I'm aiming to not do well-known cryptids. I want to learn about new cryptids and pass that knowledge on to you. I won't be talking about Sasquatch or the abominable snowman or how I think they're the same thing. I won't be talking about El Chupacabra or the Wendigo. We all know about those cryptids. Let's learn about some new ones. In this series, I will be doing 5 states in each episode, with a total of 10 episodes. Let's get into it. Welcome to episode 4 of Cryptids of America. Today, we will be exploring cryptids from Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, and Maryland. I was very interested in looking into cryptids for Kansas as I might be moving there soon. I wanted to see what I'll be getting into. I was hoping to find something new, imagining something crawling across the flatlands and scaring the locals brave enough to venture into the tall grass. Sadly, I was disappointed. The most popular cryptid in Kansas is most likely Bigfoot. Though I'm not exactly sure about this, as Bigfoot is talked about a lot, but then it's also stated that this cryptid is only in very centralized areas of Kansas due to needing trees to hide in. Kansas is also famous for its hauntings. Now, I don't consider a house a cryptid, but you can find at least 6 haunted houses in Atchison, Kansas alone. But back to the cryptids. The cryptid that I decided to report on for Kansas is Sinkhole Sam. Sinkhole Sam inhabits Lake Inman, which is located in, you guessed it, Inman, Kansas. This lake is also known as the Sinkhole. Sinkhole Sam is said to be a worm-like creature, described by eyewitness reports to be around 15 to 30 feet long. Really? That's just a huge difference. Anyway, Sam is said to have a body as thick around as a car tire. He has a flat, almost prehistoric looking head, as some witness reports also say that he has a tail fin that will cross the water from time to time. I never thought that I would be doing a water cryptid for Kansas because water, but they have a few, and Sinkhole Sam isn't even their version of Nessie. That privilege belongs to... I couldn't find a good picture of it, or a video explaining how to pronounce its name, so sorry. The first sighting of Sinkhole Sam supposedly happened in 1952. While fishing in Lake Inman, a pair of fishermen had a close encounter with the cryptid. Shortly after casting their lines, they saw the monstrous form of Sinkhole Sam moving towards the surface. When Sam broke the surface, they were in awe and terrified as they had just seen something that looked like it belonged in another era, in the distant past, not in the present. This sighting spread through the small town of Inman like hot gossip, inciting tales of more sightings and multiple news stories about the creature of the deep. In the first story, a scientist calls out the monster hunters, claiming that Sam is nothing but a plain old Foopengurkle. There's nothing special here. Sam is simply believed to be an extinct creature that used to roam Kansas when it was still part of the seafloor. But that didn't stop the sightings. That didn't stop a second news article about Sam being sighted again and even shot at this time. But he seemed fit as a fiddle afterwards. In some of the more embellished sightings, witnesses claim that Sam was known to swallow entire cows whole. There were even reports of Sinkhole Sam trying to snatch children from the shoreline. In the 1960s, there were later sightings of Sinkhole Sam in a completely different lake, Kingman Stake Lake in Eureka, Kansas. That's 102 miles away from Inman. What are my thoughts? Very basic brain thought. Snake. Big snake, but snake. Snakes, to me, look like prehistoric beings, even if they're sitting in my hands and staring at me. Yes, I have held snakes. There's something very off-putting about them. Maybe that's not the right way to say it. When you think of a modern-day creature, they don't look right. It's like they never evolved. At least 2 species of snakes do reach the lower level of the length of sinkhole Sam. The reticulated python is known as the longest snake in the world. It can reach lengths of 33 feet and can weigh up to 348 pounds. Along the same lines, the green anaconda can reach up to 29 feet and 500 pounds. Those aren't just big snakes, they're huge. As I spoke about with the beast of Busco, Oscar, things underwater are optically magnified. With the fisherman's story, seeing a 30-foot, 500-pound snake in the water, it could have looked much larger. Additionally, we also need to discuss salamanders. The barred tiger salamander is indigenous to Kansas. Now it's much, much, much smaller than sinkhole Sam, but it proves that salamanders can exist in Kansas. There are stories of giant salamanders in Kansas. They're another cryptid. Could they be one and the same? Just a relic of the past that somehow survived into the present? Lastly, Boop and Gurgle is not a real extinct species. That scientist, he just took them for a ride. Are you from Kansas? Have you ever had an encounter with sinkhole Sam? Let me know. Out of all the states in the United States, Kentucky is actually one that I have visited multiple times. I have family that lives there and have stayed in some pretty remote areas, and I've never seen anything. I also hadn't really heard cryptid stories from Kentucky, so I was surprised to find that there's no less than 17 cryptids in the state. Maybe more. Bigfoot is there, obviously, a couple different river monsters, Nessie lookalikes, and Mothman. I always thought of Ohio as being Mothman's home state. That's my home state, and that's the story I always heard. The devil monkeys also made another showing, and I think we've all heard of the Pope Lick monster. Still, choosing a cryptid to report on was difficult. After a lot of hemming and hawing, I finally decided. My childhood came back to me and the nostalgia welled up in me, and gargoyles overtook me, and I decided on the Demon Leaper of Louisville, Kentucky. I have to admit, finding information on this cryptid was difficult. Even the image I found was one of very few online. It's from a book, which I bought, called Chasing America's Monsters. It's listed in the description below. I'm very excited for this new research material to come. I should have it before my next video. Now, the Demon Leaper is an animate gargoyle. It is described as a bat-like creature with leathery skin, wings, claws, and talons, and it is often seen hopping along roofs of buildings in old Louisville. It is said to look very much like the gargoyles perched on the side of the Victorian Gothic Walnut Street Baptist Church in Louisville. However, it's not believed that the cryptid is one of these gargoyles specifically, as the church was built in 1902, which is later than the first sightings of the Demon Leaper. The Demon Leaper was not said to be particularly dangerous, more mischievous than harmful. It never really hurt anyone, maybe poked some people and left others with scratches, but no major damage other than fright. The first sighting of the Demon Leaper is difficult to pin down. It is believed that the Demon Leaper could, in some way, be related to Spring-Heeled Jack, who terrorized London in the 1830s. I don't fully see the connection, as the Demon Leaper and Spring-Heeled Jack are described very differently, but to each their own. It was when Spring-Heeled Jack started to disappear from London that sightings of the Demon Leaper started to appear in old Louisville. Coincidence does not equal causation, but who knows? So this would have been sometime in the 1840s. It was 40 years before the Demon Leaper had enough sightings and was famous enough to truly make its debut. In 1880, an article was written in the New York Times about a creature believed to be the Demon Leaper. It is stated that a later article was written by the Courier Journal about the creature as well, but I couldn't find the article to corroborate it. As far as I can find, there are not modern-day sightings of the Demon Leaper. I didn't even find modern-day sightings of any living gargoyles in Kentucky. So, I believe it's safe to say that this cryptid has passed on, or moved on. What are my thoughts? My preteen brain wants to believe that gargoyles can come to life. It's something that I grew up with, and just something that I think would be really cool. As long as they're friendly. I don't know that I have a very scientific explanation for this one. The closest I can come to a scientific explanation is latching on to the description that stated the Demon Leaper looked like a winged monkey. Now, I know monkeys don't have wings, but there is a bat that is massive and it kind of looks like a winged monkey. This is the giant golden-crowned flying fox. They're huge for bats. They do not look like normal bats and would definitely throw someone off if they saw them hopping around on the rooftop. They are not native to Kentucky, but as discussed in other videos, exotic creatures can get to places they don't belong. How a bat from the Philippines would have gotten to old Louisville in the 1800s, I don't know. But it's all I've got. Otherwise, maybe there really is a cryptid out there that looks like an animate gargoyle. Maybe one day we'll find it. Are you from Kentucky? Have you ever had an encounter with a Demon Leaper? Let me know. Researching Louisiana, I really wanted to find a cryptid that lives in the bayou. I wanted to find some type of swamp monster with a southern spin, and oh boy, was I in luck. There's no shortage of swamp monsters in Louisiana. Arguably, one of its most famous cryptids is a swamp monster, the rougarou. If the rougarou is not Louisiana's most popular cryptid, that title most likely falls to its version of Bigfoot, the skunk ape, another swamp creature. Even without touching those two, there's plenty of cryptids to look into. Did you know that Louisiana has its own version of the chupacabra called the grunch? It was news to me. I also found the cauchemar very interesting, but as they're more like the physical embodiment of sleep paralysis than a cryptid, I decided not to report on them here. I actually left the swamp. I found myself very interested in a cryptid that didn't inhabit the swamps of Louisiana, at least not full-time. I had never even heard the name of this cryptid, the Wild Girl of Catahoula. The Wild Girl of Catahoula inhabits Catahoula Parish in Louisiana. She is believed to be about 16 years old, 4.5 feet tall, and 130 pounds. She has long brown hair and walks with a noticeable limp. Many sightings claim that she has a club foot, although this has not been proven. More outlandish sightings claim that she is a ferocious-looking being who can run as quickly as a deer and jump high enough to clear a 7-foot-high fence. Most noticeably, she wore no clothing and didn't speak a word. Throughout the years of her sightings, she was not considered to be violent towards people. There is only one report of her attacking a boy, and she was quickly chased away by bystanders. Sightings of the Wild Girl of Catahoula started in the early 1880s. By July of 1888, she was reported on in Harrisonburg's Catahoula News. In this news story, her description was given, and multiple sightings of her were detailed, including one where she stole a goose from a farm and carried it away with her. After this theft, there were search attempts, but she was not able to be found. 3 months after this article, 2 upstanding citizens, Captain J.M. Ball and J.C. Golden, had an up-close and personal sighting with the Wild Girl. They claimed that they saw her standing on a log with a pig in one hand and a knife in the other. During this sighting, it was stated that she was covered with hair like a beast. Once again, in 1890, there was a write-up about the wild girl being sighted by a merchant and his daughter. In 1891, the infamous sighting of her attacking a boy happened. Ultimately, after many search attempts, some even including sniffer dogs, the wild girl was never found, and her story was never proven true or false. What are my thoughts? Well, she was a girl. Stories of wild children aren't unheard of. The most famous case of a feral child that I can bring to mind is Jeannie. Now, the way that the wild girl of Catahoula is described is not exactly the same circumstances as Jeannie, but there are definite parallels. In the wild girl story, it is hypothesized that she was the child of a gypsy who was abandoned. As she might have had a club foot, meaning she was deformed, this definitely could have happened. It was the 1800s, it was a different time. There was no CPS to make sure children were treated well. There are children who have been found raised by primates, wolves, dogs, bears, anything you can imagine. It's a sad truth, but it's a truth all the same. But there's another explanation. She never existed at all. After the two upstanding gentlemen told their story, a local businessman hired Golden, one of the men, to create an illustration of the wild girl with the pig and the knife for advertisement. Now, this advertising campaign was never proven, but it was highly speculated. It definitely sounds like something an unscrupulous businessman would do to me. Are you from Louisiana? Have you ever had an encounter with the wild girl of Catahoula? Let me know. As my roommate is originally from Maine, I asked him what cryptids I could find in Maine. He looked at me like I was crazy. Choose your audience wisely, my friends. Researching Maine, I found the usual suspects. Bigfoot, called Sasquatch there, is huge. Of all the cryptids I looked into for Maine, Bigfoot holds the place as the most popular according to most. I did find an article that referenced a map that claimed to show the most popular cryptids in every state. The map claimed that the most popular cryptid in Maine is the Dover Demon, a cryptid native to Dover, Massachusetts. Now that's interesting. If Bigfoot isn't the most popular cryptid in this state, then that spot would most likely go to its Loch Ness Monster cousin, Cassie, also known as the Casco Bay Sea Monster. But what we're going to talk about today is much different than those cryptids. Join me on a journey to learn about a ghost moose. The specter moose is a massive ghostly moose that has been sighted in Maine for over 100 years. The specter moose is said to be completely white, or light gray, except for its eyes, which are a brown color. This cryptid is a mountain compared to normal moose, standing between 10 and 15 feet tall, with antlers that are said to stretch between 10 and 12 feet across, with 22 points on each side. It has been estimated that this cryptid weighs upwards of 2,500 pounds. But even with all that weight, it can move as fleetly as a deer. Last, but certainly not least, the specter moose is said to faintly glow, and in one particular story, be able to walk straight through solid objects. The first sighting of the specter moose is believed to have happened in 1891, when a hunting guide named Clarence Duffy spotted a huge white moose somewhere near Lobster Lake. This first sighting was pretty much brushed off. Clarence was actually laughed at for his story. It wasn't until his second sighting a few months later that the creature was taken more seriously. The timeline of sightings for this cryptid is long, and there are many notable sightings where multiple people had close encounters, so I'm going to try to break it down for you as well as I can without going on forever. In 1891, a hunter shot at the moose, but the bullets had no effect, except for making it mad. In 1892, another hunter hit the animal with a shot which it seemed to react to, attacking afterwards. I don't believe that's something a ghost would do. In 1899, there was supposedly a news article about the specter moose in the New York Times, but I couldn't find this article. At least not where it wasn't locked behind a paywall. Without paying for a reprint, this is the best I can do, and you unfortunately can't really see or read the article at all. At one point, it was believed that the specter moose was deceased, but its body disappeared. Sightings continue to this day, and the moose has gained a new name, the spirit moose. What are my thoughts? First off, and most obviously, albino moose exist. They are rare, but they do exist, and there is an area in Maine where they are more prevalent than normal. The big difference between albino moose and the specter moose is their eyes. Albino creatures normally have pink or red eyes, and the specter moose has brown. But it's not impossible for albino creatures to have brown eyes. Another large difference, pardon the pun, is the size. Normal adult male moose grow to about 1,600 pounds and 6 feet tall, with an antler spread of 4 to 6 feet, with 8 to 12 points on each side. However, when I first saw a moose in a zoo, I was shocked by its size. I expected these creatures to be a little bit bigger than a deer, and they aren't. They are absolutely massive compared to deer. I can see the layperson overestimating size, weight, and everything else because they just weren't ready for how big the animal is. We also can't rule out gigantism. There's just some animals that are bigger than others. Now, moose rarely live more than 16 years in the wild, but if there's a population of them with the albino genes, it could explain the large range of sightings. From personal experience, I know white things can seem to shimmer in the moonlight. I don't know why. I'm sure there's some sort of scientific explanation, but my research didn't find the answer. I kept being redirected to black lights because Google isn't the smartest search engine. It didn't help. Walking through solid objects? I obviously can't explain. But overall, this just seems to be a moose. A rare and intriguing one, but a moose all the same. Are you from Maine? Have you ever had an encounter with a specter moose? Let me know. My research into Maryland was interesting. Usually the most popular cryptid of the state jumps straight out. It's normally right at the top of every list. But Maryland seemed to cycle through 3 rather equally. If I had to put them in order, it would be Maryland's version of the Loch Ness Monster, Chessie, the Goat Man, or Maryland's version of Bigfoot, the Sykesville Monster. Yes, the usual suspects are there, but the Goat Man is new. I didn't actually look into Maryland's cryptids too deeply. When I saw the one I wanted to report on, I just stopped. I had a very short interest in the Snollygaster, but it was beaten out by one that I just couldn't resist. An adorable, furry, ghostly, mischievous, downright terrifying demon cat. You can't spell Washington, D.C. without the D.C. after all, right? The demon cat at first appears as an ordinary cat, described as both a black cat and a tabby cat, depending on the observer. However, it does not stay that way long. Once your eyes lock with the demon cat, it changes. Its eyes change from normal to fiery red, and its body swells up to the size of an elephant. It will then charge the unlucky observer, giving them quite a shock before disappearing into the shadows, as if it never existed at all. But not just anyone can stumble upon this cryptid. Not unless you have access to the basement of the United States Capitol building or the White House. But what might be most important? A sighting of the demon cat is not only a frightful event, it's an omen of misfortune or death. The first sighting of the demon cat is purported to be in 1862. A night watchman was patrolling the basement of the Capitol building when he spotted something in the darkness. He saw eyes glowing with all the ferocity headlights of a fire engine. Soon after, the demon cat appeared, growing to the size of an elephant. However, when the night watchman shot at the cryptid, it disappeared right over his head. Sightings of the demon cat seemed to coincide with unfortunate events. The demon cat was seen patrolling the ground floor of the White House shortly before the assassination of two presidents, Lincoln and Kennedy. It was also seen there when the stock market crashed in 1929. In 1935, the demon cat made it into the Washington Post. In this article, it was given some very imaginative descriptions. Overall, it's something that I wouldn't want to see in a dark basement. The last official sighting of the demon cat was in the 1940s, just as World War II was coming to an end. However, even if the demon cat hasn't been sighted, ghost cats are still being sighted in the governmental buildings of the United States. I suppose the silver lining is that the demon cat never really hurt anyone directly. It just scared the bejesus out of them. What are my thoughts? This isn't the first that I heard of animals haunting the White House. Apparently, there are dogs as well. I read somewhere about a bear, but I couldn't find the story during my research. It's a strange phenomenon, but the human brain can make up a lot. The suspected origin of the demon cat is a regular cat. Cats were released into the Capitol building and the White House in the 1800s to combat the pest problem. They weren't pets, they weren't treated as such. Does this mean that one turned into a demon that foretells misfortune? Who knows? Maybe it's just the shadow of a regular cat that gets blown out of proportion. I chose this story because I don't have a good explanation for it. I can't go into science mindset and try to debunk it. Either everyone who has had a sighting of the demon cat had some sort of shared delusion and hallucination, or there's just a demon cat. That's all I've got. Are you from Maryland? Have you ever had an encounter with a demon cat? Let me know. From reporting on a river monster in a state with very little water, to finally getting to talk about a feline cryptid, this video has been a joy. I believe that there are logical explanations for almost all cryptids. But just having one that's a complete mystery, that's what makes all of this so fascinating. I hope you enjoyed this foray into the strange and unexplained. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.